This is Ask Pastor Steve, and today I'm going to answer 3 questions. Here's the first one. It comes from, I name her by permission, Nicole R. She's a part of Cornerstone Church. Hi, Nicole. Thank you for this question. And her question reads, I've seen a lot of recent controversy disparaging Doug Wilson, the guy out there in Moscow, Idaho, and his ministry. In what ways can we be positively influenced by his wisdom? And in what topics does Cornerstone disagree with him? Great question. I'm glad to answer it. Let me just tell you, I don't mind telling you at all, that I've been paying attention to Doug Wilson since the late 80s, 1980s. I was a pastor in Riverside, California, and he started producing a little, let's call it a magazine. It didn't have many pages. I don't remember what, 7 pages in his magazine. And he wrote articles in it. A few other people wrote articles in it. It was called the Credenda Agenda. And I don't know how I ever even heard about him way back then. There was no World Wide Web where you heard about things. Somehow I heard about him and I subscribed, and every month I would look forward to the Credenda Agenda showing up. And I knew immediately right then, I really liked the guy. And I still do. I really like Doug Wilson. Now, I don't want you to hear something that I didn't say, and that is, I didn't say I'm a Doug Wilson groupie. I didn't say he's the only guy I follow. I don't call him on Monday mornings and take my orders from him. I've never spoken with him. I've never met him. There's lots of other people I also really like and follow and have done for many years. But Doug Wilson is definitely on my list of good guys. I think he's one of the brightest pastors, teachers, believers that we have in our day, though I differ with him on some things, and I'll talk about those, but I hold him in very high esteem. In fact, I'll just go ahead and admit this. I don't know if I should admit this. I'll admit this. I would very gladly sit down with him for a cigar and a glass of fine bourbon to the glory of God. All right, there I said it. So I think he's a fine man, one of many men that I think are fine men. I'm not his groupie, but I really like him. In what ways do we differ? Primarily just in these 2 ways. One, he's postmillennial, I'm amillennial. This doesn't have to always lead to some differences, but in his case, it does lead to some differences. So he's going to be way more inclined to talk on his podcast about political things, governmental things, whereas I'm going to be way more inclined to just talk about biblical things, theology, Christian living, and so on. He's post-mill, and I'm amil, so I differ with him on that. Here's the other thing. He's Paedo-Baptist. They believe they baptize their infants and their children, who then become members of the covenant and members of the church. And in their case, they go to what I think is just consistent paedo-baptism. They also believe in paedo-communion, so they give their baptized little ones communion as soon as they're old enough to drink from the cup and eat from the bread. So they're paedo-Baptists. Me, I'm a Baptist. My kids are definitely not in the covenant until they believe. And once they believe, they need to be baptized. And once they're baptized, then we can let them join the church. And they don't get communion until they believe. So, yeah, we have differences there, but I don't think they have anything heretical, or else I'd have to think all Presbyterians have something heretical. I think they're just more consistent Presbyterians. Presbyterianism goes there if you're consistent. So I differ with him on those things. But those matters aside, there's lots of good stuff to learn from Doug Wilson, and not just Doug. There's a whole team of people out there. There's other pastors. There's a whole crew. I really like Joe Rigney, who's out there. I like Jared Longshore. I like all those guys. And Canon Press is pumping out more goodness, more wholesome stuff to help believers in our day, families in our day, marriages in our day, parenting in our day than anybody else I can think of. So I'd really encourage us to take advantage of all the good stuff, eat the meat, spit out the bones. For me, the bones are infant baptism and covenant children. For me, the bones are postmillennialism as they do it, very politically inclined, politically involved. Spit out the bones, eat the meat, and enjoy them. So I'm going to add, you didn't ask this, but I'm going to add, why are some people so spun up about Doug Wilson? There are probably a lot of reasons, but here we go. Seems to me like the people who get spun up about Douglas Wilson, one, temperamentally just don't like what has been called the Moscow mood. Don't like the Christian liberty and the fun that they have having a cigar on a podcast, like Albert Mohler would never do that. And Albert Mohler would never invite in anybody else who would do that. And so there's a defining of the categories. Doug Wilson, you're in a different category. You would do the cigar thing on your podcast. By the way, I think he smokes once a year, and it's for that podcast. It's for that episode. But anyhow, some people don't like the Moscow mood. Personally, I'll just tell you, I do. I'm digging it. I enjoy it. So there, I said it. Others don't like his Christian nationalism. All right, I differ with him a little bit on that, and I'm not all up on that because I'm optimistic mill. I'm not post-mill, so I'm not all up on Christian nationalism. But frankly, I like what they're doing. I'd like to see our nation have its laws rooted in God's laws. That sounds good to me. I think it's only going to come about, and I think they think it's only going to come about by gospel, church building, discipling, baptizing, growing the church in our day. But some people don't like their Christian nationalism. I think this is, now you're ready for the real reason why I think people don't like him? The real reason why I think people get spun up about him? I think it's because they are actually feminists. Or they are tinged with feminism, and they react against his godly, biblical, patriarchal views. They react against his clear, correct biblical teaching about wifely submission. So they attack him in any way they can. There's a whole lot of slander. There's a whole lot of falsehood. There's a whole lot of accusations, because when you've got a social media program like they do in Moscow, you're wearing a very large target. And when you come out boldly and say things that are true like they do, you've got a very large target. I esteem them for what they're doing. Doug Wilson is a great guy. Take advantage of the wealth of good stuff to be found. Don't become a groupie. Have lots of other bands you listen to as well. Well, that might be more than you were asking for, Nicole, but thanks for the question. I enjoyed the opportunity to answer it. Let's see what kind of trouble I get into as a result of some of my answers. Next, this question comes in from another Cornerstone member, John D. John gives me permission to name him. Hi, John. Thanks for your question. I love it. I love the opportunity to answer. Here's your question. Does the creation mandate still apply to us today? Specifically, the part that says, be fruitful and multiply. Many today are getting married and are physically able to have children, but choose not to have kids. I've heard it said, John writes, that Christ fulfilling the law negates the creation mandate, and that the Great Commission effectively replaces that command. And now, in the Great Commission, we are to multiply disciples versus make more people. John goes on, but if we remove the part about be fruitful and multiply, would we not also need to get rid of the part that says have dominion over the earth? All right, that's the end of John's question. Great questioning, John. I'm glad you're asking these things. And yes, absolutely. The cultural mandate still applies. Be fruitful and multiply still applies. It stands until God rescinds it, and nowhere in his word has he rescinded it. The command to be fruitful and multiply is not part of the law. It didn't come from Moses. It didn't come down on Mount Sinai or thereafter. It's not part of the law. It's at creation. Not only is it at creation, it's at creation before the fall. That's what makes it a creation mandate. So it's for all people in all places and all times. And nothing about the Great Commission states or implies this supersedes the cultural mandate. The cultural mandate is no longer in effect. From here on out, it's just Great Commission. So yes, let us be fruitful and multiply. At a glance, American demographics would strongly indicate that we need to be fruitful and multiply. The mere replacement rate is 2.1. We're at 1.7. Get busy, Christians. Make some babies. Lots of them. You say, well, we can't afford to make babies. Go ahead and have them. You'll figure out how to afford them. They won't starve. You will feed them. Having babies is often what's needed to motivate a guy to find a better paying job. Get married in Christ. Be fruitful and multiply. It's still part of the Christian life. It's part of the perseverance of the faith. Thank you for your question, John D., and thanks for joining me. Hope you'll come again.
In your courts, your people thrive.